Launch team wishes you good luck and Godspeed.
Space Monkeys, blasting off with Alexei Zamyatin. He's the co-founder of Interlay. We're here to talk about the exciting things they're building on top of this Bitcoin bridge they've already created to Polkadot. Alexei, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Now, we had Dom on the show just a few short months ago, and he dropped some hints, about kind of a bigger vision for the Interlay and the Kintsugi projects beyond just bridging Bitcoin over to Kusama. Maybe you could just give us a little information about who you are and how you got involved in this Bitcoin project.
So I'm Alexei. I have a computer science background. So I actually got into Bitcoin in 2015. By pure coincidence, I was trying to become a security researcher, looking into how to obfuscate Tor traffic. So how to hide Tor traffic behind Skype traffic. So it looks like you're using Skype or you're using Tor.
Oh, and where did that come from? Where did that?
IT security seemed cool. You also have to do a lot of things. It's not just, you just don't, Java was really big at university back then. So you don't just code Java, but you have to know much more. You have to know how front ends work, how services work. You just have to learn, if you're a security engineer, you need to know a bit of everything, the full stack.
Yeah.
And that just always sounded more interesting. And it sounds cool, hacking and stuff.
Yeah, fascinating.
So I guess that's where it came from. And obviously, so one of my supervisor, by coincidence, he was also looking into Bitcoin stuff, and he said, well, look, we all know Silk Road, right? And that's obviously where people use Tor. So why don't you take a look at the remnants of it? By that time, it was really shut down. I had heard about Bitcoin before, but I never really looked into it. I was my bachelor's, I know a bachelor's degree, so I was still pretty young, and I didn't really know much about Bitcoin. Obviously, got to learn about it, and being very honest, I found it very exciting, but what excited me most at that time was not the aspect of global currency and payments, but Namecoin.
Oh.
So I actually got into crypto through Namecoin and decentralized DNS and essentially trying to, figure out a way. Well, I found the idea very intriguing that you replace the ICANN, right? And the centralized DNS registry and basically have a decentralized version of it.
Mm-hmm.
Looked into Namecoin and unfortunately it didn't work. Everybody was squatting names. It was all everything was squatted and people were just just behaving maliciously. And then kind of looked and tried to figure out why, found out about merge mining. So Namecoin doesn't have its own proof of work, so it reuses Bitcoins. So it's not too far from how Polkadot shared security model works, where we basically benefit from the relay chain.
Okay, yeah.
Miners on Bitcoin can also mine on Namecoin at the same time. It's basically it doesn't fragment the mining power. Okay. And that was actually the very first cross-chain mechanism, and it was actually proposed by Satoshi himself, as far as I recall. So it goes really communication between different blockchains. It goes way back to Bitcoin, actually.
That's deep. That's cool.
And that's how I got into Bitcoin blockchain, and actually specifically into cross-chain stuff. So I've been actually looking into interoperability since then, and obviously Polkadot white paper came out.
Yeah.
And that's how it got me hooked.
Just for viewers who aren't familiar yet, can we get a quick rundown on the mechanism of bridging Bitcoin over to Polkadot?
So there is no way for Bitcoin to react or know about what's going on let's say, Polkadot.
Mm-hmm.
And what you would like to do, obviously, is you would like to say, okay, I want to move my Bitcoin from Bitcoin to Polkadot. And I would like to not the person who moves it over shouldn't be able to use Bitcoin on the Bitcoin chain while it's wrapped on.
Right, we don't want to duplicate the asset.
Exactly. And the thing is that Bitcoin only exists on the Bitcoin chain. So that's why you need this wrapping mechanism, right? That's how cross-chain communication works in general. And more modern systems, right? Like Ethereum, Polkadot, they have smart contracts where you have more support, you can build more complex logic, and you can use stuff like light clients to verify other chains. But Bitcoin doesn't have that.
Right.
What the Interlay bridge design uses, and it's actually called Xclaim. The original paper was called Xclaim, and it was presented for the first time back in 2018 at a Bitcoin conference, actually. What it does, it relies on logic being implemented on the Polkadot side. So handling the wrapping, unwrapping, and essentially verifying whether transactions have been made on Bitcoin is all done on Polkadot. And on the Bitcoin side, to manage this locking and unlocking of the Bitcoin while it exists on Polkadot is handled by so-called vaults.
Yes.
So it's a decentralized network of operators, and these operators receive Bitcoin from users, but obviously because you don't want to trust operators, they require to pull up collateral. So a vault operator deposits collateral into the Interlay network, into the Interlay chain. This collateral can be DOT, USDT, liquid staking, DOT, and other interesting assets.
Any assets, or these assets kind of brought
Any
about?
assets, anything that is available on the Interlay chain. And essentially, that's why we're so interested in cross-chain stuff. The more assets, the more diverse assets we can bring into Interlay, the better like the set of like asset, the basket of assets that's securing the BTC. And the goal is obviously to have it correlate with the Bitcoin price.
Yeah.
Because the security of the system is economic. You as a vault operator, you lock up collateral and you get Bitcoin. And you basically hold on to this Bitcoin. You can do with it what you want. You can move it to cold storage or whatever. And what you need to do is you need to return it to users when they want to go back from Polkadot to Bitcoin. So if I minted IBTC, InterBTC with you, I send Bitcoin to the deposit address that is suggested by the Interlay network that happens to be your vault. And in the background, I submit a proof to the Interlay chain. So I actually submit a cryptographic proof that I made the Bitcoin transaction. Now, this is done through the user interface. It's hidden from the user. And if everything works well, you never have to do the manual proving. And then I get IBTC and I can use it in DeFi. And when I want to go back, I say, okay, I would like to return to Bitcoin. And then it might be that your vault is selected again or another vault. And then you as a vault operator have 24 hours to return the Bitcoin to me at a 1-to-1 ratio minus fees. And when you've made the Bitcoin transaction, you have to submit a cryptographic proof to the Interlay chain to actually show, look, I actually returned the Bitcoin to Alexei.
Yeah.
And if you don't do that, you're liquidated.
It's cool. I think the final piece of this puzzle is, it makes sense why a user would want to move their Bitcoin from the Bitcoin network over to Polkadot network, and they could do fun stuff with it. But as far as the vault owners go, what's in it for them?
The fees are captured through bridging. So when I mint IBTC, I pay a fee. When I redeem, I pay a fee. Right now, this fee is static because at launch, we just wanted to keep things simple, and introducing super high fees doesn't make sense at launch, right? You want to make it very easy for users to get in and out.
Sure.
So right now, the treasury is subsidizing the costs, right, of vaults. So the treasury is subsidizing vaults. And look, it's similar to how proof of stake works, right? There's an emission of the native token that a part of that goes to vaults to subsidize their current capital costs.
Okay.
In V2, and as we get basically, we move forward and get more adoption and see more users using Bitcoin and bridging in and out, and the revenues of the network increase, vaults basically earn Bitcoin, right? They earn a share of the BTC fees that are captured by the system, and that are like mint and redeem fees. The fees that basically XCM fees. When you move Bitcoin, IBTC between different chains through XCM, there's a small fee charged, right? So you're basically paying for this security, for the insurance that the vaults have put up as a user. You're like, when you do stuff with IBTC, so you move it through XCM, you do trades on the DEX 2.0, right? That's kind of already a bit in the next step. You use the lending protocol that's coming, and or you use other stuff on Interlay. There's a small fee charge on all of these things, and that's routed to vaults. So essentially, the more volume you see on the Interlay network, and also of IBTC moving across different chains, right? So the more integrations we manage to build up, the bigger the ecosystem that IBTC has, the more revenues generated by the network, and the more revenues gets routed back to vault operators.
Okay, all right. Let's talk about 2.0. What's this going to look like?
What we'd like to do now is we'd like to make it very easy for people who have Bitcoin to put it to work. And so what Interlay is doing next is it's expanding from being a bridge protocol to a one-stop shop for all things Bitcoin finance, right? So you'll be able to trade, borrow, lend, stake Bitcoin to earn yield, run more complex strategies, go long, go short, directly on Interlay with one click. So think of it this way: you have Bitcoin, you open up in the Interlay dApp, you say, okay, I'd like to insure my Bitcoin exposure, right? I'm a bit cautious about maybe the price crashing. I want to kind of, limit my exposure upwards and downwards, right? I just want to de-risk. You pick one of these strategies, you click on it, you get a Bitcoin deposit address, you scan a QR code from a Bitcoin wallet, Bitcoin is sent, done. That's it. So no more 5 clicks to bridge, go to another chain, figure out how the interface works. 1 click, you're done. And essentially, that's like the big vision. I think that's also the big step to making it very easy to use Bitcoin. And also, like, I think generally, like, onboarding users into Polkadot. Everybody in DeFi has Bitcoin, right? We speak to a lot of people right now, like, validating this assumption. And the feedback we get is, either people have Bitcoin but they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
They don't have Bitcoin because they can't do anything with it in DeFi.
Right.
Or they're using WBTC, or were using Ram BTC or Solana BTC, which now they're obviously no longer using because these things turn out to be centralized.
Right. So how do we address this issue? I mean, like, especially a lot of hardcore Bitcoin people don't want to mess with anything. They don't want to send it to this QR code wallet. How do we build up sort of like trust in?
I think building up trust is a matter of time, right? So we speak a lot to people who are like into Bitcoin, and that's where actually I come from. So I initially like try to build directly on top of BTC and try to figure out like all these like forkless, like velvet forks, and how we deploy stuff onto Bitcoin without doing soft forks. If you look at the community that is very, very strict on strictly focused on Bitcoin, like you can call them maxis or whatever, I don't think that these are going to be our first users.
That's right. Right.
You have, however, 300 million Bitcoin users.
Right.
Not all of them are maxis. A lot of people are coming into Bitcoin right now. They don't have a strong tie to this one asset over the other asset. What they care about is they see Bitcoin as a hedge against the global financial system. And obviously what they're used to outside of crypto is, well, they focus on apps. Like when you use a specific app, like do you really care like whether it runs on AWS or somewhere else and like what's happening in the background? When you go to an ATM and you withdraw cash, do you know how the interbank settlement works? No, right? You don't care.
Sure.
And I think that's the whole point where we need to get to.
Yeah.
So our first step as Interlay is really obviously to still focus on Polkadot users, right? That's the strong initial like innovator community that I think is very interested in just, experimenting with new stuff and getting new applications and use cases into Polkadot. And from there, our next step is to expand to other DeFi ecosystems.
Right.
So get people from Ethereum who have Bitcoin but don't know where to deploy it, get them to deploy into Interlay.
Yeah.
From Solana, Cosmos, Avalanche. Doesn't matter. People in DeFi who want BTC should be able to come to Interlay and use it. And for this, we have to focus on on-ramps. And this is where one of our big goals lies on the front-end side, is to make it as easy as possible for anyone in crypto to use Interlay. But you shouldn't have to worry where you get the native token to pay for the transaction fees. You don't have, like, wallets, yes, there's a lot of work being done on that, right? You have Talisman, and that's improving in Polkadot. MetaMask snaps, right, already supported in the dev mode of MetaMask. So you can actually connect MetaMask like to Polkadot chains, but it's not supported in the main browser wallet. But then what we can do, we're not a wallet builder. Right? We can integrate, but we don't build wallets just yet. What we can do is partner with on-ramps. So we're actually leading the charge right now and actually getting together. Talisman is doing a lot of work, and we're like basically also trying to collaborate and build business cases with other parachains to bring big on-off ramps from fiat into crypto onto Polkadot.
Okay. So
you come to Interlay, you want to fund your wallet. You don't have Bitcoin, right? Or you have it in your cold storage. You just want to try it out, right? If you have to figure out how you get your assets onto Interlay and it takes you that longer than 5 minutes, you're going to drop off. So instead, you say, okay, I'm just going to try with a few dollars. Buy with my credit card, I can deploy into Interlay, I can play around, and it's like done in a few minutes.
Wow.
And then the next step, okay, let's say you're on Ethereum, you want to go onto Interlay, you want to try something out. You have BTC and WBTC, or you just have ETH, but you want to get exposed to Bitcoin. Same story. Again, until we have trustless bridges between Ethereum and Polkadot, which we hear rumors Q2 2023, Snowbridge should be coming. But until then, okay, well, why not just use some crypto on-ramp solution, right? Crypto to crypto on-ramp, quickly switch ETH for BTC, mint, you're done.
Okay.
And that's the focus. Like the amount of steps you need to do before you can use Interlay. And also the same applies for all other parachains. That's where we're trying to collaborate with other parachains, because they face the same problem.
Yeah.
We need to reduce the amount of steps new users have to take. And if we manage to do that, we can bring DeFi users who have Bitcoin, and they will come to Interlay to use BTC. But once they're on Interlay, it's so much easier to get them interested in the Polkadot ecosystem, right?
Sure.
You suddenly you have people who came for Bitcoin, and now you tell them, okay, look, you have these one-click strategies. They're very simple. If you want to do more, hey, look, you can go to Moonbeam, you can go to A-Star, Parallel, you can go to HydroDX, Akala, and then you can do the more interesting stuff there. You'll have specialized AMMs, specialized lending protocols, things that are more sophisticated. Like we don't aim to be like a super sophisticated, complex AMM or super sophisticated lending protocol. No, the goal is to be a one-stop shop, very simple to use, very easy to understand.
Gotcha.
One click.
Right. Okay. So when can we expect this sort of interface? Is this like 6 months out, 12 months out? What are you guys thinking?
Well, I mean, we have a pretty ambitious timeline, actually. So we've released a blog post outlining, okay, well, what are the next steps? So like on Parachain side, it's ready. We're just figuring out the last details on the front end side.
Okay.
But this will be like, it will look like Uniswap or Compound, right? It's not one click yet.
Yeah, okay.
Then it will go on Kintsugi in January. Again, subject to test and running well and
Sure.
nothing breaking. And then in parallel on January, we'll have our 5th security audit by SR Labs. And after this audit and the testnet phase and also Kintsugi being battle tested in probably early March, late February, let's see, obviously we'll try to push it sooner. You'll have everything go live on Interlay. And at that point, you will see the one-click interface. So we're looking at more or less, let's say March. I will probably say towards the end of Q1.
Yeah.
Beginning of Q2, but we're really aiming for March.
Fantastic. Okay, so lending first and then a DEX. What about the DEX? Like, what other pairs are you guys going to get in this DEX?
Our main goal is to focus on blue chip assets.
Yeah.
So KBTC, USDT,
Okay.
KSM, obviously.
Nice.
And then we'll see like what else we can do. So you'll see like a lot of new collateral assets coming onto Kintsugi. Like we already have LKSM, so liquid staking KSM, and you'll see other liquid staking versions coming in. But then what I think will be very exciting, it won't happen on day one, right? But what you'll be able to do is, and that actually goes more into like the synergy between the DEX, the lending protocol, and the bridge, is that our vault operators will be able to reuse their collateral in the AMM by providing liquidity, or in the lending protocol by supplying capital into the lending protocol.
That's cool.
So right now, if you think about it, okay, we have the collateral, it secures the BTC, but it's just sitting there. It's not doing anything. It's kind of a waste, right? It's like, that's why it's not so capital efficient. But now with V2, with the native AMM and lending protocol, vaults can just supply this collateral into lending. And also just if they are a bit more open to risk, they can supply it into the AMM, and actually now they can earn on this collateral from the bridge and also from the DeFi protocols.
Cool.
And because it's done natively and we can manage liquidations, there's no, like, the security risk is very limited to the user, right? To the user, like if a vault gets liquidated, you just unwrap these positions. So you withdraw capital from the AMM, and basically that's how basically in the end you have the liquid asset again that is back in the bridge after the liquidation. And because Substrate is modular and we can actually have there's a lot of new features that we can build into Substrate, so we can make sure that liquidations are the first transaction that go into a block, that they always happen in a timely manner and things like that. It allows us really to build a super capital efficient system where no cent remains unused. And that's the exciting bit.
One last question for you, because I think you're pretty deep into Bitcoin. You ever think about the Bitcoin utopia of the future? Like, what would be your dream of what the world looks like with Bitcoin integrated in, let's say, 20 years?
Wow, 20 years is a long time.
That's a long time.
Fair. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, I don't obviously know what's going to happen in 20 years. I guess the dream would be that before 20 years pass, we reach 1 billion users of Bitcoin, right? So people actually, Bitcoin develops into something more than just being a speculative asset. You see it in LATAM, right? It's becoming more. Like you see governments suddenly introducing it as a payment.
That's
asset,
right. Brazil just...
Exactly. So they just announced. I mean, you obviously have to wait, legislation is passed, and you have to look at adoption. El Salvador is obviously patient zero. But I think we're on the right track. Bitcoin can become more. It can really become an alternative to centralized banks. It can become an alternative where you basically can use it wherever you are. You don't have to worry which country you're in. You just have access to a financial system where you can pay. You can also use financial tools. And I guess our dream is that the world will slowly converge to a more open and decentralized financial system where you don't have a few big actors manipulating things, and you don't use things like FTX. You can always have fraud, right? Power corrupts, but transparency and essentially having a system where no single party can really influence what's going on, it makes it so much more difficult to corrupt, right? And the dream is obviously that things like FTX don't happen. And Bitcoin, I think, is if we had decentralized exchanges on BTC and obviously other assets, I think that would significantly improve the system. But until we get there, I think over the next few years, we'll have a crackdown in terms of regulations, unfortunately. But if we look ahead like 20 years, I do believe that the regulator, I mean, the regulator's job is not to forbid crypto. No, the job is to protect consumers against scams, against fraud. And when the regulator discovers that BTC and like DeFi actually allow, like you can encode security into the system, right? You do have code risk, so it's going to take a few years until everything is stable.
Sure.
But I do believe that the regulator will like DeFi and Bitcoin specifically, essentially, because it's like you can check, like it's not, you don't have to like do manual audits of like books of different exchanges. You can check it's on chain. The funds are there. They're not part of the exchange's balance sheet. They are separate. They're actually on chain.
Yeah.
They cannot be stolen. It's much, much better than trusting that, a few parties, a few people that run an exchange, won't misbehave.
Gotcha.
And then they might get sued, maybe, if they do.
Right.
Maybe one last bit, like how Interlay fits into that.
Sure.
You asked me about, like, what do you think about Bitcoin maxis and people who really don't want to move their Bitcoin up through a bridge,
right?
How we want to actually get them as our users.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, something that Dama has already teased during his last kind of interview with you. Our ultimate goal is to build a non-custodial Bitcoin savings account, right? It's, we found a way how we can allow people to earn yield on BTC without it ever leaving their wallet. It sounds like magic, but it's actually not that complex. Now, I won't go into all details because if I tell you, then it's like everybody's going to do it.
Yeah.
But essentially, you can prove to me that your Bitcoin is locked. And then through a few tricks on Interlay and then maybe later also other protocols, we can make sure that your Bitcoin never has to leave your wallet while you can still use parts of it in DeFi. So that's essentially our big goal, because I think then it really then there's no reason to go through a centralized provider. Like, why would you?
Amazing. All right, dude. Well, it's really nice talking to you. Bitcoin has a place in my heart, and it's just so exciting that you guys are making it more useful and more accessible as well. Thanks very much for coming on the show.
Well, thanks for having me.
I'll talk to you soon.